Welcome to Southern Literary Review's series of interviewing authors. My name is Allen Mendenhall. I am publisher and editor-in-chief of Southern Literary Review. I'm joined here today by Professor Tom Kaufmann. And Tom has authored this book, Historic Alabama Bells, and we're here on the campus at Tuskegee University to talk about it. Tom, thanks so much for joining me today. It's really a pleasure to have you, and it was a wonderful morning touring the campus and really enjoyed getting to see where you work. So thank you for that.
So welcome. Absolutely. Sure.
Well, tell us first just a little bit about Historic Alabama Bells and how you decided to write this book and what got you interested in the subject matter.
You know, and trying to keep it as a short story because it's the story of my life, actually. I saw, this started when I was 2 years old, and I saw the bell in our church in Birmingham, Alabama, being hoisted into the tower, and I was 2 years old.
Wow.
And that made such an impression on me that...
2 years old, so you remember this from when you were two. Wow.
And I, if it's okay to say, I even verified it that I was indeed 2 years old because the cornerstone of the church was 1960.
Okay.
And I was born in 59, and so this was around the time I was close to 3. In the fall of 61. I can still remember the leaves being, turning colors and falling from the trees even at that age. So that's how it started, and have had a lifelong interest since then in bells. Sometimes I worried that I was maybe irritating my mom to try to drive by churches to look at bells and towers in downtown Birmingham, but it continued lifelong, and so the idea for the book was not there until about 12 years ago when it was suggested to me to write this book, and
so the idea came from someone else.
Came from someone else. I had this interest and passion for bells, but I think, like many things, you have an interest, and you're so absorbed in your interest, you maybe not thinking about what other avenues of maybe sharing the information or sharing the passion. And it was suggested to me by actually I think it was 2 or 3 people.
Wow. And
so that germ of an idea got in the brain, and that eventually gestated, and then that's all I could think about was writing the book.
So that was well over a decade ago. How long did it take you to assemble all the data and visit all the bells and write about them? That must have taken years.
It did. It took 7 years. I counted as 7 years from the time that I began. My wife, Ann, bought me a very nice camera, which I'm very, very grateful, and I want to credit my wife and my son for being so supportive. My son, Tommy, and my wife Ann, because they were, and she bought a camera for me, and off I went, climbing towers. In the beginning, it was difficult because, I would try to get access to a tower, and the people who were the stewards of the tower, owners of the building, didn't quite know what is this person doing, wanting to go up and see our bell or get in our tower. But after a while, it became easier, and so I visited. I've even lost count of how many towers through the years, and always with great fun to go up in the towers. And I always enjoyed, since I was a boy, climbing into adventurous spaces like that, and so I was having fun.
Well, was there a particular site that was your favorite? A particular bell, maybe, that was impressive?
That's a very good question.
I mean, there are a lot in here, so you visited plenty.
There was, there's so many that come to mind. I don't know if I could name one per se, but maybe what I can say is my favorites are the ones that have the most mysterious ways, or curious, or kind of what's the term? we'll just say interesting ways of getting up through hidden doorways and stairways and
little hidden passageways.
Hidden passageways. There was one church that I visited that did not make it into this book that had a stairway within the wall.
Oh, wow.
With winder stairs at the corners, and there was one in Birmingham that literally I felt claustrophobic climbing because it was a long tunnel with wire mesh, and I had to kind of squeeze through and with one arm raised, climbing the ladder one rung at a time.
Well, and these passageways aren't meant for everyone to go through,
no,
so many of them are probably quite difficult to navigate up to the top, right?
Exactly.
And then once you get up there and you behold some bell, what is it that you do? What is the process? What are you looking for when you see that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think age and patina and something very old, something that has something that can guide us to the past, a connection to the past through the inscription.
A particular inscription, that's what I was going to ask. Can you tell the age without an inscription, or will that require some more research later?
Many times it's amazing. After you do this, I say a few times or a number of times, you can tell by looking at the bell if it's really old. And older bells have a signature. They have a definite signature. And the way that they're cast, older bells have a crown at the top. It looks literally like the crown that Queen Elizabeth wears on occasions, ceremonial occasions. And those are called cannons. And the Liberty Bell has those, for instance. And so that's a very quick way of seeing the age of a bell. The way they're mounted is a way. When they are mounted to wooden headstocks, that's a clue. And they're such a wonder. I think people maybe underestimate bells and their place in society and the information they can give us many times. There are bells that are made that have inscriptions inside the bowl where the clapper strikes, and has information of who cast the bell and the foundry that cast the bell and the date. But it's just a matter of investigation and trying to look for these things, and having talking with people who have had a lot of experience also helps.
Well, I can say until I heard about your book, I hadn't put a lot of thought into bells myself. So it's very interesting to know that these bells have a unique history, and some of them traveled from faraway places to get here in Alabama. Is there one in particular that is just more significant historically than another, or one that traveled from particularly a unique place to get to this destination?
I think I would say yes indeed. And if it's okay to say, Alan, there are several bells that could answer that question, but I'd like to say the First United Methodist Church in Tuscaloosa has a bell that was cast by the Revere Foundry, which was Paul Revere's bell foundry. And it's one of the last bells that came out of the foundry before the successor, Henry Hooper, acquired the foundry after the Revere family. And this bell was cast in 1828. And it's a beautiful bell. It's a marvelous bell, and that one is in its own kind of category because of its connection to Revere. I'd like to say that there's another bell, and this is kind of an interesting story, which I'll be giving the newspaper masthead version of it. The Brown Chapel AME Church in Selma has a bell cast by McShane, the McShane Bell Foundry from Baltimore, Maryland, and it's a beautiful bell. When I visited that church to do the photography on that bell, I had a chance to talk with the pastor, Reverend Leotis Strong, and inquired about whether the bell rang during the Civil Rights March. And during that visit, he talked with one of his parishioners, and that confirmed that indeed it did ring on Bloody Sunday. And so that that bell has very, very unique significance. So those two bells, I would say, among many others, of course, but those two bells stand out.
Well, your journeys throughout Alabama and your research into the bells here led you to a new project. And in fact, you have a book that should be forthcoming. You are going to Philadelphia, correct? And looking at the bells there and writing about them.
And actually, Alan, I've already been to Philadelphia and to Boston. And the book actually originally was proposed as a single book on Philadelphia and Boston, but the publisher desired to do two books. So I will be doing a book on Philadelphia, the bells of Philadelphia, and the bells of Boston as they relate to the American Revolution. And so I've already taken the research trips to Philadelphia and Boston, which were marvelous. And I just wanted to say the people there who were very, very helpful, extremely helpful, to give me access to Independence Hall and to the Old North Church, for instance. I don't want to leave out anybody. The Old South Meeting House, the Liberty Bell, and there are so many bells in this I want to say exploration that people just don't know about.
Yeah, and I know that with each visit to a site, many people are involved. I noticed the acknowledgement section in your book is quite long, so you've had a number of people assist along the way, and I'm sure you're very grateful to them for all the help that they provided you in writing not just this book, but in the forthcoming books.
Oh, indeed. And the acknowledgement list will be as long for sure in the forthcoming books, and maybe possibly longer. They were just so extremely helpful, and the thing I want to do is even now say thank you to those people, because they were so kind and to give that kind of access. And if I could mention, which is related to bells, is the category of tower clocks, which are included in the Historic Alabama Bells book, and also in these forthcoming books they'll be included. The original term for bell was the Italian word clocca. And so clocca in Italian means bell. So before it became a movement with hands and a face and so forth, it was clocka meant bells.
Well, that makes sense, because there were towns where people didn't have wristwatches, and so they could tell what time it was by the chiming of the bells. Right?
That's right, by the striking of the hour.
How about that? And so it became a citywide essential, basically.
Oh, absolutely. Bells, in fact, if he would not mind, David Rodriguez, when I was with him in Boston at the Old South Meeting House, and Emma Struve, David said that that bells were the very technology that we have today, where today we have cellular phones and we have all kinds of devices, and he said that that's what the bells were in that day, and it's absolutely true. He really made an excellent point.
Well, I've got to say, you have led me to appreciate bells in a way that previously I had not. So thank you for that, and thank you for this interview. It's been a real pleasure, and I really appreciate your hospitality. Thank you so much for hosting me on this campus. It's been wonderful, and I wish you the best with these new books. Again, I have Professor Tom Kaufmann with me from Tuskegee University, and his book is Historic Alabama Bells, and he has new books forthcoming about the bells in Boston and Philadelphia. Thank you so much, Tom, for having me here and for doing this interview.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.